Good morning, colleagues. I begin by apologizing for being late. Unfortunately, or rather, I had something else that took too much time in the morning, more than I had expected, so sorry about that. The press conference today, I wanted it to be more of the press briefing. It's really in response to the discussion we had last time, which is we need to, feeling that we need to have more regular engagement. And in particular, when there's a specific item, we can discuss that. And today I wanted to discuss, give you an update of where we are with the rollout of the new currency or new generation banknotes. That's really the thing, but I think it should be seen in the wider context of agreement or the need, as we expressed it last time, for more regular engagement. So I can confirm that the rollout has continued from Monday, June 3rd. Banks have almost in all branches around the country have received the new generation banknotes. Of course, it has been sort of an interesting engagement, meaning to make sure that those specific institutions in a secure way can get the currency, but now that is almost complete. The other thing is the public awareness. As I said, we needed to do significant public awareness in short order. So this was the part that we needed to emphasize. This is going well. At this moment, you can, in every single bank that you are in, any banking hall, there are posters, there is information. I need the bullet, the flyer. Yeah. There are posters, flyers that actually provide information about the new currency, new generation banknotes, and in particular give information about some of the security features that can be helpful in identifying the new banknotes. We've also continued, not just the banks, but their agents around the country, and also the mobile money agents that are ubiquitous in the country. I can say that by Friday tomorrow, we are confident that every single mobile agent will have that poster, and we are talking around the country. Of course, a lot more has happened. We have used print media. We've also used radio, TV, everywhere, including all the channels, radio, local language, English, Swahili, all channels. I should also add that in the various administrative offices, meaning for, let's say, chiefs, sub-chiefs, maybe here in the urban areas, we probably don't even know where your local chief is. But my generation of university students do know very well where their local chief and sub-chief are. But in any event, this is much more important in the rural areas, of course, and I think we are confirming that today they all have posters that explain that and explain the currency. You've also seen yesterday there was a new app that was launched. It's the Central Bank of Kenya Banknotes app. It is the ubiquitous Android platform. So you can locate it on Google Play. And this again provides information about the security features. I presume that we'll get the iOS version of that, and then also again, in hopefully soon, enough so that it can be useful for those of us that want the information. Not only do we want the downloaded, let's say, poster, which you have already, but also if you want these other features, using it in the more, let's say, trendy, avant-garde kind of approach, you will have that up. One of the things that took some time in this process is the recalibration of the various machines that are used by banks and other institutions. These are primarily the verification machines. You generally see those when you go into a bank, they're on the teller's desktop. They look like a printer, frankly, and you put money in there and they'll verify and count and all that. Obviously, the machines need to be recalibrated. They need information about what currency and all that. That information, we gave it to most of the banks from the Tuesday we met, Tuesday, June 4th. And a lot of them, in terms of the desktop machines, they've all been recalibrated. The ATMs, that's taking a little longer. It was expected to take some time. It takes, because you literally have to visit every single ATM and recalibrate it. But that is actually going very well. It's going faster than we were expecting. So in some sense, you can see, I'm sure some of you have gone to the ATM and you've seen, some of them are dispensing the new generation banknotes. That said, there has been some people that have been slow in having their machines recalibrated. It's a standard process. When you have a changeover, and I think you saw the stories that some of you wrote today and yesterday about the U.S. Embassy, which was fixed. That's not a problem at all, and it shouldn't be a problem for anybody. Again, the information of the specific information obviously is available from us. We are the only ones who know what the information is in the currency. And so that has to be communicated to the machine, in a sense, to be uploaded on the machine. So in any event, it's a standard process, also training, to train the tellers. We have done that as well. As we speak, there are people in Mombasa, a huge training operation in Mombasa, training tellers of the various banks and various institutions. We have done significant training around the country. Obviously, Nairobi was the first one. But I think the point here is that is the public awareness thing that we needed to, that we are doing. That said, it is important to emphasize that the currency, the bills remain, or the banknotes will circulate together. Going forward, they will circulate together. Obviously, until October 1, when the old generation or old series 1,000 shilling banknotes will cease to be legal tender, and the others will continue circulating until they are withdrawn through the usual process of attrition, meaning, if they get too dirty and things like that, you'd expect we'll take back quickly the 50 shilling banknotes, because they're the dirtiest, as we can all attest, looking at them and things like that. But anyway, the point here is that they will remain in the system until withdrawn. In the case of the 1,000 shilling old series banknotes, or for that matter, until we take them out because of the clean bill, cleaning our notes. That said, all is not rosy, because we have been, in the few days since we met you, we have been sued 3 times on various aspects of these things. We, as I said last time, yes, we are pretty confident with what we've done. and expect that we will argue our case. The next hearing about this will be on the 25th of this month, and then which will cover 2 cases. And on the 26th, there'll be one that will do the next case, or the 3rd case. I wanted to say something about the withdrawal of the old Series 1000 banknotes. The process is clear. We issued a press release, I'm sure you've seen it, dated June 6. And it clarifies, puts in English, simple English, what exactly we intend to do, and providing, let's say, substance or details to the legal gazette notice that we presented or we issued on the withdrawal of these banknotes. So the process is clear, but I think just to emphasize, for those of us, it is divided in terms of the amounts, so it is risk-based, right? For those of us that would be changing the exchanging currency notes of amounts not exceeding 1 million Kenya shillings, and so they can do that in their commercial bank, if they have commercial banks, or if they have a bank account, or obviously CBK branches, currency centers, or their nearest commercial bank. The point is, for those that do not have a bank account, well, those will need to get in touch with the central bank, and that will then will endorse the specific that specific conversion, and work with them to figure out where that endorsement can be executed. What I mean by that is, you can think of somebody, out in the urban area, in the rural area somewhere, wherever it is, right, with an amount, let's say 2 million, and he doesn't have a bank account. It's a bit odd, but so be it, right? So what will happen there is that they will, I'm sorry, I should have said less than 1 million. I said 2 million, so I messed myself up there. So a person out there with, let's say 900K, and wanting to convert that, and does not have a bank account. Even that at 900K without a bank account is a bit surprising. We all know that. But so be it. So once they get in touch with the CBK, and they give their details and things like that, confirmation about what they're doing, then we'll work with them, and there'll be an agreement as to which bank they can go to, right? So which bank do you want to go to, kind of thing. It's in your neighborhood, so you don't want to force everybody to come to Nairobi or Mombasa or any of those things. So, and then we'll make arrangement to make the conversion there. That's really the point we are making in this. And the idea here is, it is obviously risk-based, the whole process, and intended to also maintain security of the transaction. You can imagine what would happen if people really got to know that you are taking to a bank, X amount of money. They will, things can be kind of messy. I think we understand that. So we need to be sensitive with that, and that's why even the location of where you're going to do the conversion, as it were, we will need to work with you, and so that it is, to the best location. Then those obviously that have amounts more than 5 million, again, these are the bulk exchanges, or bulk exchange. They would need to get in touch with the central bank, get the endorsement, and then, of course, after that, the transaction or the conversion can be done. And we gave you the phone numbers that they would call. It's actually in the press release, and it is something that I think is useful for people to know. So that's really the point I wanted to make. But I think in all this, we know that the objective is clear. The objective is to rid ourselves of this menace of illicit financial flows and also deal with the counterfeits that we talked about last time. So in that sense, it's a two-pronged approach, or should we say, it's attacking two specific problems that we have seen in our country, and we want to kill them at source. For you to know that we have been in touch with our counterparts, meaning other central banks in the region, other central banks, particularly in the East African community, but we have also been in touch with other central banks in the wider region, Africa and beyond, and explain to them what is it that we are doing and ask for their support, including asking them to do enhanced due diligence of any flows to and outside our jurisdiction, so that it is very clear that they are looking carefully at those flows, so we don't end up having money leaving, money coming in, in circuitous ways, in your typical money laundering operation. So I think the point here is that, yes, we have dealt with that in that particular way, and they are offering their cooperation as you would expect. In a sense, it's not just a Kenyan problem. It is actually a problem for the entire world, and those that are more closer to us, more proximate to us. And I think this is why they have been very supportive and have issued instructions to their banks, etc. There are maybe three more points I wanted to make. The next one is actually simple, because I have seen in some of your discussions, there's just some of, I don't know, obviously it's not nobody in this room, but there has been some sense that we haven't learned from the mistakes of the past. I'm talking of other countries, other jurisdictions where they tried to do some demonetization. I thought I explained last time, in particular, or in some detail, the example of India, which a lot of you has been cited by in many articles about how really they did not, it was not that successful. I don't want to argue whether it was or not, it was successful or not. That's not the point. The point is we need to learn from each other, and we learned from the experience that the Reserve Bank of India went through doing a similar exercise, not identical, but similar. And last time I think I made this point, I explained it in a fair amount of detail. So today I'll just remind you, for emphasis, that yes, we did look in detail in their example and understood or came to understand where they were weak, where their process could have been strengthened. And I think I talked a bit about this, including the things about having a stronger AML CFT framework, a risk-based framework as well, and then also poor communications. I think we explained the other points, but I just wanted to underscore that we hope we have learned from the experiences in other jurisdictions. There are two other points. The first one is there's a question about the product itself, meaning there are some people that are a bit excited about how it is. And I'll probably say that a lot of people, the reception that we have seen is not just very favorable, it is very exciting. Very exciting. People are very excited. There are stories about, going to see Shosho and, and she getting very excited about this. Yesterday I was in Kondele, Kisumu, and yes, there was a lot of excitement. A young man came to me with one of the banknotes and wanted to interact with me about it, ask how is this thing and what are the features and so forth. It's exciting and it's expected because it's really their thing. It's really their currency. That I think is clear. As a matter of fact, you probably know a gentleman by the name Njoroge Dirango. Is that his name? Is he in the room? If he is in the room, he should stand up and be recognized. He's not in the room, but I think you all know who he is, right? He's one of your colleagues. Anyway, we retweeted one of his tweets that had a photo of sort of him holding a fan or two fans of the currency. I think you know that photo. And it was just a plain vanilla photo in the sense there was there isn't much verbiage. It was just a photo, maybe a couple of words, and that was it. We retweeted it. And you'd be surprised that was our tweet that has the all-time highest retweets. You understand? So we retweeted his tweet, and our retweet has our highest all-time retweets. Now, I don't know. This I thought was interesting. It's not like you keep records about these things, but hey. But it shows that people are excited about it. That's the point I'm making. Anyway, so I leave that. At the same time, so that is something that is there. And as it is expected, yes, it has led to a lot of other things, not just any, but I think it is all very positive in that sense. There are interesting things about the texture, the colors, all these things. There are sort of sub-questions about whether we copied Uganda or whoever else it is. If you look at it a little more closely, you'll see that that sort of critique may not hold too much water, but so be it. It's good that people are talking about their currency. I think that is important. There is the question, of course, that has been put out there. Well, Governor, why didn't you do polymer? Well, in the jargon, we call it plastic. Why didn't you become much more plastic-oriented bank with, like whoever else is out there? Actually, the issue was raised, was discussed, and discussed meaning assessed. In these things, it's better to have the experts deal with it, because I may really love plastic, but it's just me or you. So we need to do a study on this and all that. And it's true, this is a new possibility that wasn't there, say, 20 years ago or whatever else. And it is true that there are some countries that have actually adopted plastic, or should we say polymer-based material for their banknotes. What is the alternative, like the one we have? It's really cotton-based banknotes. It's really, a lot of it is cotton. Same cotton you have in your shirt kind of thing, right? So the point is this: we have looked at other places, and first, the public here in Kenya used to the cotton. To the cotton-based, we call it paper, but cotton-based material, and which has, unlike say the plastic, the polymer, which has a very smooth feel. Now that doesn't sound like much between us, for you or for me, but actually we've seen, for instance, in another country, for instance in Botswana, when they introduced the polymer-based banknotes, on two of their, well, maybe a few of the lower denominations. The public, the most immediate, let's say, reaction from public was that of the loss of texture. Loss of texture. Now, it doesn't sound, it sounds maybe crazy, but frankly, I don't know if you've ever, I don't know now, maybe put it differently. It's the same loss of texture as, say, you're wearing a cotton shirt and then you're wearing a polyester shirt or a silk shirt, right? There's a huge difference. I think we understand what I'm saying. And the public may not like that. And in the case of Botswana, there was a bit of concern about that. That is one point. The other thing is it's very, the environment we are in and the way we treat our banknotes is actually quite harsh, right? So there are those in say, the advanced economies, people are they put their banknotes well in their wallets and things like that. But here we fold it into, a little triangle or whatever it is. The smaller the better. It's really, we abuse the note in that sense, right? And also the way we keep them, at times very close to ourselves, so they get sweaty and all that. They are working under very harsh environments. That's what I'm saying. So you try and do your plastic thing through that environment and you won't have much of a plastic bill. But that is, and this has been seen, for instance, in the case of Zambia, and they had actually to go back to revert to the cotton because the Zambians probably use their currency the way our people, ourselves, use it here. I think we all understand the picture quite well. There were other issues, technical issues. I'm not going to go through every issue. But there's also a thing about, there are some security features that we wanted to have, which we believe are quite important. And that is, for instance, visible to the public, the thread. The thread is very important. Because if you asked anybody, Mama Mboga out there, or my show, which are the features that she understands 100%? I think it is always the thread and the symbol that is in there. I mean, that's the starting point. You don't need to do the UV light and things like that. Of course, we have said before that there are more than 20 security features on any banknote. You probably know maybe 12 of them. But I'm just making the point that there are many more security features, but most Mama Mbogas and all that, the quick check is the thread and the lion. There are also other things. They can lift it and see the other numbers, other features, and all those other things. But the point is that we didn't feel comfortable that this was the time to move away from the plastic, from the thread. And you cannot actually embed a thread in plastic. That is the point. So doing plastic, it meant you needed to do other things that are much more significant in terms of security and things like that. Now, having said that, polymer is actually like 2.5 times more expensive. 2.5 times more expensive. Of course, it's longer, meaning is longer lasting. Oh no, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. The polymer lasts up to 2.5 times, right? But the price is actually twice. So I think you understand what I'm saying. So it lasts 2.5 times longer, but it is actually cost-wise, it's twice as expensive, meaning feature to feature kind of thing. And so what we resorted at, and all these things put together, I didn't tell you all the problems and all the issues, but I wanted to explain enough for you to see that it wasn't sort of a random decision. That decision had been dealt with. And so we went with this cotton-based approach, material, and also did something on it, which is to completely print everywhere. There are no white surfaces. That's something that none of you have spotted. If you look at the notes, there are no white surfaces anywhere, meaning it's harder to get dirty, you understand? And also what we've done is we have applied a particular, let's call it varnish, for want of a better term. So the same way you varnish wood to make it last longer. So we have applied a varnish that will make it last 30% time, so 30% longer. So I think the point here is we did think through this, and I wanted to explain to you that actually it was, there was a thought process behind it. Finally, I don't know, we may take a vote in this room, and I wonder how many of us would say, how do you spell, what is not the Latin, what is the Swahili for bank? Now we all get excited, right? Okay. It's interesting if you are a lover of history, as some of us in this room are, or even for that matter, lovers of the law, as some of us are in this room, or lovers of other things. So I want to say a few things. This is not quite in public domain, so I'll make sure there's a story written about this at the right time. When you came in through the front door, if you looked on the left, if you looked on the right there, it says Central Bank of Kenya. If you look on the left, it says Banki Kuu ya Kenya. So let's start there. You are being welcomed into the Banki Kuu ya Kenya. Actually, if you look at our act, it says Banki Kuu ya Kenya. So in terms of legality, we are solid. In terms of, they could have named this institution anything they want. They could have named it Reserve Bank of whatever, Kenya. They could have named anything, right? But they named it Central Bank of Kenya from the beginning and named it Banki. The Swahili is bank that they named is Banki Kuu ya Kenya. So for those of you that are legalistic, I think you can rest comfortably. But what I haven't told you is how did it happen. So this is the story, and I think it's worth for you being here because you're hearing it for the first time. Actually, when those that were working towards the putting together the bank, the central bank, back in '65, thereabouts, actually before that. I'm not going to go into all the details, but they discussed the name in English. And at that time, there was Bank of Tanzania, which was moving quite ahead. And I think by then they probably had already, they'd moved quite ahead, and it was Bank of Tanzania. They knew that is what they wanted to have. Bank of Uganda also, this is the breakup of the East African community. And there are arguments for that, right? Bank of Tanzania, Bank of Uganda, in terms of similarity with the Bank of England, which, as you can imagine, was with us at that time. So the parallels are clear. But the point is in discussing, and in particular, the first governor, Dr. Baransky, made the point and was taken up and agreed that it would be better to use a name like Central Bank of Kenya on the grounds that it is simple and that the central bank will be working internationally. So in a sense, it's a much more outward-looking name, Central Bank of Kenya. And that's really what carried the day. So they accepted the Central Bank of Kenya. They accepted this. Now, the names of the people that were there. Mr. John Mishuki, you all know him very well. and who was then I forget his position, it's here somewhere. He's a permanent secretary of the Treasury at the time. And also you have somebody else, the late Tom Boyer, who at the time was the Minister of Economic Planning and Development. So those are the three names that you see in this story. So what happened then is they needed to decide on the Swahili name. And somebody suggested, which was actually the first person who is writing this, suggested that, to Mr. Mishuki, that the name should be, the translation of the Central Bank of Kenya should be Banki ya Katikati. I think as governor, I can tell you that I'm very happy it was never named Banki ya Katikati. So Mr. Mishuki, of course, being the diplomat he was, did not want to dismiss this right away. So he said, why don't you talk to Mr. Tom Boyer about this? And when he was told, when the minister Tom Boyer was told about this, he smiled. So he was more gentle than you know. So he smiled and said, this is a literal translation, but he doesn't cut it. And he, in his view, he actually, I have read some more about this, and the next day he came back, and he is the one who suggested, why don't you have the name Banki Kuu ya Kenya? And his point, and the discussion with the person who was writing this, in discussing with them, he said, you know, it could be Banki, it could be Benki, but this is not a Swahili name. It is actually an English name, bank. So this is not, so it is any can do. Meaning he was the ambivalence of this, the equivalent, Banki, Benki, let's take Banki. So it was, in a sense, that sort of decision. Not that they weren't thinking about Swahili and correctness, but in their mind, these two were, both of them were equally useful. I'll come back to that in a minute. So that's how the name Banki Kuu ya Kenya became our name. There are other discussions which I think are quite interesting to the historians. For instance, should we use internationally, which name should we use? And in a sense, for recognition and things like that, the sense then was we should use Central Bank of Kenya, international recognition. But within the jurisdiction, so the name Central Bank of Kenya had priority in a sense that the English name outside, right? But internally, and in particular in our currency, which takes priority? Which should come before the other? I'll ask you to look at all the currency that you have from the beginning, and there is actually a specific order. There's one that is at the top, and then there's the other one that is at the bottom. And that was decided then. I'll let you do some homework on that one. So bottom line, so actually if you look, look at it. Very specific. And actually, but truthfully, what you have is you have the Swahili at the top. Is that so? You see what it is in the corner? So that was decided then, and that priority has remained in our notes and has been respected despite all these things. It's a very interesting story. It tells you that we are connected with those that went before us and those that will come to us. And that's the interesting about currency. And because it connects us with a lot of people, through trade, through And so I would suggest also that you look at the history of our currency, connectedness with everything. There's a book known as The History of Our Money, which was done in for the 50th anniversary. It has a lot of this. The story is not there, but I'll ask somebody to write this story because of how the name came up. Because it is good to know that those that went before us actually worried about these things and they thought through them. There was no sort of, randomness as maybe today now we expect. There's some sort of thought process and understanding the language or the purity of the language and knowing that either can do. And I don't think that's a surprise because there are many words today that have, what is the plural of forum? So you say that I'm attending a forum on economics. So you attended two what? We can say, actually we say forums, and then there are those that say fora. Now if you're a purist, you'd actually go with the fora, because it's a Latin name, right? A Latin word. So I think the point is one can understand, and actually particularly for those names that are not, let's say, specific to the language, quite often they allow themselves multiple words for the same thing. Anyway, I don't think that's a big issue, but I thought the history of our currency is a big issue. I would encourage you also to go to our newly opened museum. It's up in the National Museum. There's a special area that was recently redone, and you can actually see a lot of the history of the currency there. I intend to go there sometime to see it myself with a DG and maybe bring a few others, but I think you can already go there and see it. That's all I wanted to communicate today. So I can now open so we're in your hands now.
Good afternoon, Governor. Njoroge from K54. And the question is, are we likely to see an extension of the October 1st deadline?
Answer is very simple, no. Kenyans love extensions. So, and I'm saying that in the worst kind of way. I don't think they love it, it's just that, so we have to plan. There won't be an extension. If you have an extension, it defeats the purpose. It defeats the purpose. So come midnight of the last day of September, and that's it. You have 3.5 months to worry about that. So there's no contemplation of an extension.
Any other questions? Weird?
That's probably the easiest question Jimmy ever asked me. What other questions?
Yes, my name is Otiato.
No, it's Gunyunyu. Yeah, Gunyunyu.
I don't know if the CBK is keeping track of the number of 100 denomination notes being withdrawn and how many have been knocked up so far, because we keep the track or something.
Okay. The quick answer is we haven't done the numbers yet. Remember, we have things coming in and out, but I think the point I'm making is the focus for us has really been setting up the system. You okay? Can I answer? Okay, so the focus for us has been setting up the system, public awareness and things like that. So that has been the focus of it. And all information that is needed is out there. But I think we are only in week number what? Week number, 3 now, right? So the first 2 are gone, and then week number 3. So I think the point is we are moving. We are moving. We'll obviously let you know. We'll give you more information as we get there, right? That's what I think you're probably asking, and the answer to that is yes. We'll provide you with information.
Okay, the currency. This wanted to get an update on the KCB, Europe Bank deal. We would like to get any directions, in relation to the FTA, the subsequent court cases, and if the people who caused it.
Afternoon, Kepambe with the Citizen.
question. I know you said you don't have the actual numbers of how many you've withdrawn. I'd like to know whether you have a number of how many new notes you've printed and whether you are satisfied with the behavior of the exchange or whether you feel people are coming out and exchanging these notes for the new ones.
Fine.
Yes. And then
Oh, you have another one? Okay, go ahead.
I can ask my second question. This is on the behavior of the currency. I know it has to be 2 weeks after the demonetization directive, but we've seen a loss of about 6 cents. That's around 60 cents to the dollar. The fear is maybe some of the effects of the demonetization may be slipping through to the effect of the shilling. I mean, how are you seeing it, and are you ready to act if there's any volatility? Thank you.
Habling, and then Governor can take this one.
Thanks, David from Bloomberg. You just started your second term as CBK governor. Would you tell us what will be your agenda and focus the next 4 years?
Okay, fine. Thank you. So Guyuyu's question about Imperial Bank and KCB. Frankly, my expectation is that we are at the tail end of that whole process. I need to remind you, and through you, your readers, that it's not quite plug and play. I hope we understand what we mean by that. It's not a plug and play process. So there's a lot of, let's say, backroom finalization of things. And I'll probably even say, when somebody is ready and has proposed to somebody in terms of marriage and all that, there's also some serious backroom issues that need to be sorted out. So I'm not saying that it's at that level of complication, but I think the point is, it is understandable that it isn't a plug and play. That's the first point I wanted to make. But that has been going on. And it's now the tail end. Expectation months? No. Weeks? Barely. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't want to say days, but I think the point is that it's at the tail end, and I hope we can have it completed so that, aside from other things, the depositors can receive their, let's say, disbursement that was promised after completing this thing. Of course, we do acknowledge that the process has been lengthy, and also acknowledge that the depositors have quote unquote suffered. But I think the point there is also there is a sense that this matter, as we said before, this is not simple. If it was simple, we would have done it like this. And I hope by now it's clear that we want to do things quickly, right? Quickly. There's no reason in delaying anything. What needs to be delayed gets delayed. What shouldn't be delayed should not be delayed. I hope that answers your question. The court cases, obviously we need to strengthen them. And I think, I don't want to reveal too much here, but I think it is important to say that, yes, we are strengthening them. We need to strengthen them because we want justice to be served. We don't want a charade in any way. I think we've been very consistent on that from the beginning. So if we want a charade, there are other ways we can do. We can go to theater instead. But we want to actually do justice to the depositors and to the country. So that is all I want to say about that. Kev asked about numbers of notes printed. I don't have the numbers here. But I think the point there is, it's not just the printing. It's also, because you could print notes and then you just, let's say, not release them. So it's a coordinated effort, very coordinated. It's like a military operation, frankly. And it has elements of military operations in it. Meaning when you're distributing the currency around the country. It's not just military, it's also logistic nightmare. I don't know if you ever tried to distribute eggs to every single town in Kenya. I mean, and you don't want to break them, right? So you understand what I'm saying. You need special this, you need this. It is quite a nightmare, but it will be done, and we are at the tail end of that, as I confirmed. We will obviously review more information at the right time, but I think for now, that's what I want to say. You had a question about the exchange rate. As always, I think maybe at times we focus on one little thing, the rate, meaning, and then we say it has increased, it has decreased, it has strengthened, it has weakened. And I think in some sense we need to be more relaxed about that. And I had hoped that we would have weaned ourselves from that sort of bias, right? You know, if I say, careful, if I say that you are 48 years old, let's say, 48, and then you tell me, no, Governor, I'm actually 47 and a half, right? That half, 6 months, you understand what I'm getting at? I mean, what meaning does it have? Sure, 47.5 is not the same as 48. And I think at times we are more like that, where we are focusing on just a little movement or a little difference, which actually in the big scale, in the big sort of game or structure doesn't have the meaning that we are giving it. I mean, if indeed if I say that you're, God forbid that I say you're 50, and you're 47, then you really be defensive, right? Or if it is a millennial, right? Maybe millennials are much more conscious of their age. I'm not sure whether they want to be older or younger. That I don't know. It can go either way. But I think the point here is that the issue, the movement that it has had over the last few weeks, it's not an issue. Secondly, it will go some other place. What has happened in recent times, there has been a lot of demand for imports, and you can see that. I mean, you've had some imports of petroleum items and things like that. No more imports. Let me be clear. We have information of transactions of even as low as 1 million. So we look at that every day. So in a sense, it's not that we are sitting just hoping we have good information about the transactions. A few other points quickly. First, our policy, exchange rate policy, has not changed. And I have mentioned it 1,000 times now that our exchange rate policy is, we have a flexible exchange rate, and we only minimize the volatility. We intervene to minimize the volatility, and that's what we'll continue to do. It will strengthen, it will weaken, and we will just minimize the volatility. That has not changed and will not change. Secondly, we have all-time high reserves of 10.6, 10.8 billion. We've never had this. So if you're worried about, the market of what? I forget how big a transaction of, a tanker of oil, of petroleum is. So somewhere in the 7 to 10 million US, something like that. I mean, you understand, 7 million or 10 million, even make it 100 million, is nowhere near the 10 billion we are talking about. So yeah, we have the firepower to deal with any eventuality and more. So we have sufficient firepower to do those things. So are we worried about it, as you said? The answer is no. Why? Because we are aware. Let's say somebody is trying to money laundering, is into money laundering and is trying to go into US dollars so that they can take them away in their socks or whatever else they do, right? The point is, do we have information about that? Do we have information about the transactions? I mean, where do they get the FX? Where do they get the dollars? To be from a bank, from a forex bureau? I mean, that's really where it is, right? Nowhere else. It's true there are those that say that there's an informal market of dollars, but how big is that? How big is that informal market? It's tiny, nothing. You think they can support even 1 million? No, they cannot. So I think the point here is the numbers are there for everybody to see. As long as we have the information and we are dealing with it, this shouldn't be a concern for anyone. The focus is very clear. The focus should be on closing all those exits and making sure that those that actually have want to bring their money in, they can actually follow the correct procedures, all the procedures, including the MLCFT sort of issues. David asked about my second term. Frankly, I still haven't had time to think about anything. I mean, we are doing so much work, so we'll talk about agendas and things like that. But I have to be truly honest. In my heart of hearts, I'm not that sort of a person, and I have to be honest. There's work to do. You prioritize what is urgent, deal with it, right? Now, you do have a long-term, let's say, strategic idea and things like that. And I think those we can say now it has to be continuing what we started and completing all those processes that we started. But it's more continuing rather than having a whole new, taking the bank, the central bank and the financial sector some other way. I hope you're not going to tell me to turn it around 360 degrees. I'm pulling your leg, David. Okay, any other questions?
Charles Maleki, Business Daily.
Yeah.
We know that you've been speaking to the regional central banks, and both Uganda and Tanzania have stopped some exchanges in Kenyan currency. So I wanted to know if you are aware when they will resume the normal Kenyan currency exchange, and whether you're making available the new notes to them.
I'm making available what?
The new banknotes to the central banks to that effect.
Okay, fine.
Give it just public truths. You just next go.
Thanks. In some unfinished business, you had said you'd announce the second lot of banks that were involved in the NYS transactions and the penalty that would be meted out to them, but there's been no update on that.
Okay.
Okay, Governor, a couple of questions. Number one is...
Just a second, please. Okay, please, go ahead.
The first one is about the longevity of the new currency.
Yes.
The people who say when you crumble it, it does not unfold, like the old one used to. The other one is on the issue of, you say there's no extension, but as it is, we're getting reports that some people in different areas of the country are not receiving this new currency. They're saying they're waiting until October 1st. And the last one is in terms of flag transaction, from the reports you're getting from the banks, what is the trend?
Just one more question from me. It's always about the criteria for measuring the effectiveness, and I know already what is happening with Uganda and Tanzania. Maybe we could repeat what you see will be the criteria for measuring the effectiveness, because there's still a lot of questions on how do we actually measure whether what you guys are doing is actually on the ground.
Okay, fine. So let me take those questions. Maybe there are two I can combine. Monique's questions, some from Jimmy, and then also yourselves, Kefa. In terms of working with other regulators, this is something we do all the time. Let's begin there. We are in touch with the regulators around the world, particularly the ones that are closest to us. Remember, closest doesn't mean geographical. It's also in terms of transactions. And we share intelligence as well. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised that we are sharing intelligence with another central bank or some other investigative agency, you know, whatever it is. And the investigative agencies also do the same, you know, amongst themselves. So it is, in a sense, it strengthens the effectiveness of whatever measures they are doing there. So my point is that's happening. We've actually been in touch with them, and they have actually taken the measures that we think they should take. And frankly, if they had asked us to do the same, we would do the same. We'd offer them the same support, because cleaning their jurisdiction also cleans our jurisdiction. We are not being used as a conduit or transaction point or whatever other expression you may have on this. So what is the idea? The idea is simply that we have a method of, you know, in Uganda, for instance, you can pay your taxi fare with Kenya shillings, and they'll accept it. And maybe some of us who are going over there and buying whatever it is, property or maize or bananas or whatever else that with Kenya shillings, and then, you know, whatever, it will eventually come back to us through trade, through the sort of mechanisms that we have with the Bank of Uganda to actually repatriate our currency, our back here. The point is, all that has now been suspended, and that was the essence of the discussion, the exchange between us and these banks that we are talking about. What does that mean? It means anyone, anywhere in the world, will need to follow the procedures that we have laid out in the press release and indeed in the Gazette notice. So if you have Kenyan currency and you happen to be in Uganda, well, there's only one way to get value for it, before October 1. And that is what is explained there, the same process as that applies to you here in Kenya. So meaning you have to make a trip here and then go through the AML-CFT sort of procedures and then move it. You cannot transact it, you cannot actually convert it to any other, let's say we have a kiosk somewhere in Uganda where people can do this, the central bank kiosk kind of thing, or window, to convert. No, we won't do that. It defeats the purpose. It defeats the purpose. So I think the procedure is very clear. If they want value, they'll need to come and go through that AML-CFT procedures. Of course, there are other things that we could also say that the Ugandan central banks or those other central banks are doing, will do a lot more, or rather will encourage their banks to do a lot more or enhance their due diligence, right? And therefore figure out what was the basis of the money that went there, and all those other things. But come October 1, whatever, if they haven't converted it in the way that is outlined in the press release, that, just like you, if you haven't done that, then it's paper. Actually, it's cotton, as we just explained. So I think that is clear. I think we need to be absolutely clear where it is. So I hope I've answered your question in the detail that it deserves, because this is really the essence of it. It appears a bit careless, but that's precisely the point. I use the word carelessly, but the point here is that you need to offer anybody who's holding this money in a particular way a chance to convert it. But if the same way, if my shosho has 5K in old bills that are under her mattress, and she doesn't convert it before October 1, that is, or doesn't spend it on, a party or whatever else she would, that money is paper. So it's my business to work with her to make sure that that is done, is converted. I hope I've clarified that. But now, going to the other points about effectiveness, I think we are still a ways from thinking how to do effectiveness and things like that. I think the most important thing is to ensure that at the end of this process, any illicit money becomes paper, right? And people no longer, I mean, that wealth goes to zero. Now, how do you know it is illicit? Well, if you cannot explain it, if you cannot explain how you got your money, I mean, I am on my salary, you know my salary, and what I get paid every month, and somehow I've suddenly come up with a wealth of 100 million cash, or 500 million, or whatever it is. It doesn't make sense. So I think the point is much bigger. Now, are we doing this? Is it just the central bank that is doing this? Of course not. And we don't have information about all those other things. So in a sense, yes, there are other agencies that need to do their work as well. So I hope that is also very clear. David asked about the second lot of NYS. Frankly, I don't remember where it is. The last few weeks I've been so busy, my head is spinning. So I do understand we haven't told you where they are, the second lot, but give me space and then we'll figure out where that is. How long what?
When should we expect that?
What's that?
When should we expect that?
I don't know, my friend. I don't know. I wish I would remember everything, David. At times my mind draws a blank. I wasn't prepared for that question. That's the only point. But I can tell you that as I told you last time, we actually had to change our approach because there are some specific things that, as you all know, that we've been dealing with. And those actually were much more urgent, and we had to deal with them. But the others will deal with them as well. We'll deal with them. Now we have this currency issue, which is much more pressing than anything else. I'm talking of the withdrawal of currency. And that's why, for instance, that's how we ended up having this press conference, right? Because you wanted to have information about this. So I hope you can give us some slack, or cut us some slack, as you say. So finally, the issue of longevity of the currency. I didn't get your question again. What is your question?
In terms of its longevity, how long can I hold it? How long will it still be not so worn out?
Again, it depends very much on how it's used, right? Our hope is that the lower denominations obviously have a shorter life, much shorter life, but we'd hope that is sort of in the order of years, right? And I seem to recall it was something like 3 to 5 years, some number like that. I'm guessing on that, meaning I'm working now from memory. But I think the point for us is if the currency is handled better, and that's one of the reasons why it really helps if it is small, right? If you have, something the size of a fool's cup, it has to be folded, and then you understand. So I think even making it smaller is beneficial in that regard. So it can fit in a wallet, and the wallet, sort of protects the banknote. So that's the idea. And I just mentioned that we put this layer of varnish on it, which helps lengthen the life of it. But that said, that process is something we do. In the museum, there's actually a nice diagram of the life cycle of a banknote. From when we release it, actually it begins even before, where the material is brought together, making the note and release it to the public, and then eventually bring it back. So I think the point here is that we will continue. That's standard business of the central bank, meaning that's what we should be doing, and ensure that the public actually have clean notes. They deserve clean notes, and that's what we want to give them. But I think the lifetime or the life expectancy is somewhere around the numbers I gave you. It's not that short, but on the other hand, it's not. Meaning the coins, on the other hand, have a much longer lifespan. So they are out there for much longer. But anyway, so thank you very much. Yeah. What's that?
I think that was one bit of my question. I've got 3 questions.
Yeah, you talked about the new currency. What was the question of the new currency?
Yeah, because we're getting close to.
Yeah, I get it. I now get it. The point is, your reports are coming. I explained that at the beginning. Remember, we are starting from zero. When we started on June 4th, there was no currency out there. I'm talking of the banks, right? So there was a quick prioritization. What we needed to do. What did we need to do? So that was on Monday the 3rd. And we sat with the banks and we prioritized various things. What you cannot do is just to put out the currency without first making sure that the tellers know what they're after, understand it. So you had to do the training very quickly. And again, as I say, that has now gone very well, and so we are at the tail end of it. Secondly, we needed to recalibrate the machines, and that also was done, right? There may be a few machines that are spotty out there. ATMs as well needed to be recalibrated. So I'm just making the point that even as some money was being put out in the various banks, it did not, one had to be ready for it. And that's why for some time, and even now in some very, let's say, some sports, you don't have the new currency. But that is being, and this should be far away.
But the question was, the areas that people are not receiving this new currency. You're saying they're waiting until October 1st.
Yeah, but that is the part anyway. I think this is why we are having this conversation, so that you can also communicate to the public. Meaning, they should not wait until October 1. If that's what we are telling them, if that's the impression they have, then we have a problem, because somebody has misinformed them. So it is our job, you and me, to speak clearly that the currency is out there. It may not be in your bank today, or you may not have seen it, but I know people who have actually just last week. You go to a supermarket, you go to not just a supermarket, a shop, deep down somewhere, and you come up, you are given change in the new currency. So I think that's happening, but they need to realize that it is there, and therefore know the security features and so forth. But in terms of the withdrawal, the withdrawal of the old series 1,000 notes, they should not wait until October 1. I think there'll be more and more. Obviously, between now and October 1, both will be running together. But as you get closer to that, you have less and less of the 1,000 old series, and the proportion will shift to new series. And when that day comes, whatever is old becomes paper. So I need to talk to my shosho, in the example I gave before, and assist her in changing those 5K she got last Christmas to something else. So that's really all I can say about that. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to that. Do you want to flag your flag transactions? Okay. So the flag transactions, I would rather, this is something I think we need to think a little more in the future, meaning to give you more information. So I would treat this still in the sense of, it's a process, meaning like think of it the way we think of investigations. So I don't want to reveal what it's revealing, but I think the point here is to encourage you to go for it. Of course, we expect you to be a bit more public about the transactions that you see that are illegal and things like that. It's your business to inform the public. And there are money launderers out there. We are not getting into all this business just because we think it's fun. It's actually not fun at all. But there are money launderers, and you'll see the transactions there, and you'll see it. So I think it is important for us to appreciate that we have a public interest responsibility to inform the public and also tell them that such and such has happened, and that will ward off, let's say, those that believe that they can bend the system one way or the other. So now I think I've exhausted all your questions, and I can now look at Wallace.
Thank you, everyone. As the governor promised last time when we did the one on the 3rd of June, we may be a bit more regular than just post MPC one. So if we call you on short notice like we did today, thank you very much for turning up. Any other questions, the usual route, talk to me, send us email or whatever it is to try and get as many and as quick the answers as possible. But otherwise, as usual, we'll have the governor, the deputy governor, and members of staff of the CBK meet first. Wait for a minute, and then we'll have everyone else.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a pleasant day.